bit more towards Russell Wilson because I could see the defense kind of coming on Tampa Bay and slowing New Orleans just like we saw Detroit do, just a tad. But I think you're going to have more success with Drew Brees just because I can't see two shitty weeks in a row.
So your top four in quarterbacks would be Wilson, Winston, Dalton, Cousins.
Yeah, I would go with that for sure.
Okay, I'm slightly different. I'm going to go Dalton, Wilson, Cousins, Winston.
Yeah, I just can't. Drew Brees for the money, he's just not worth the play.
No, because I think we can get some pretty good stuff on the backside. Let's move on to running backs.
Running backs for me is there's a few that I like if I'm going to pick our normal trees. I have a Melvin Gordon popped in every now and again. I have a Jonathan Stewart popped in, and it depends on. They have decent matchups. I like the overall scheme of things, but they're more what price I was looking at when I was trying to stack other positions. Mm-hmm. So who I'm really building off of this week, I really, really like Le'Veon Bell. And then I also, on the flip side, I like LaShawn McCoy. And sometimes people are afraid of having running backs on, two opposing teams, running backs that are facing each other in a game. People are hesitant sometimes to pick that. I know I've been in the past. And every time when I thought, the stats or everything told me to make that matchup, and then I didn't because of that hesitation, it always bit me in the butt. So I have no problem.
And you don't have to change the channel.
No, exactly. And, but both of those guys are definitely, a lot of their offense, obviously the Buffalo Bills have the number one rushing offense. We don't even need to talk about Bell, and look what his numbers are. He's just on the heels of David Johnson, and I think overall he has a better matchup this week. So
he does against Buffalo. I'll tell you what, as you rank them, the chalk is what it usually is: David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott. Elliott, you got a little bit of value at 8,500 this week, if you want to call that value, but I think he's going to be pretty heavily owned. This might even be the week, though, that he doesn't have a good day.
Well, I think he could be slowed, and I don't know if you could say the same thing about McCoy. And he talk about value, he's at 8,300. So I don't know why this guy respect when Le'Veon Bell's $9,000.
I have McCoy as my number one back outside of the chalk being Johnson and Le'Veon Bell. I'm taking Zeke out of the equation all this week because I'll tell you what usually happens to these young guys who are college players who are used to a 10, 12-game season. He's 14 games in. The kid has been an absolute workhorse. Against Cincinnati in Week 5, he had 15 carries, 4 catches. That's 19 touches. He hasn't had any less than that in a single game this season. I know he's going to look at the sidelines and say, feed me. Sometimes he's getting the ball and not getting hit. It's just a full-blown sprint for him, and that's really impressive stuff. But eventually, I don't care how young and how strong you are, the tread on the tire starts to wear this late in the season. It's a tough run. This is a marathon. I'm not saying Zeke's done or I'm not doing any of that melodramatic bullshit, but what I am saying is it's time to give Zeke a rest.
Well, and keep in mind, Dallas is 4th best at giving points to opposing running backs. So, the Giants, they're 19th. So, I don't know. I don't know if I would agree with that per se, but I think he'll. Are you saying you think he's going to get 10 points, or are you saying?
No, I think he's probably 90 and a touchdown. I don't know that I see him. Look, Jason Pierre-Paul just went down for the season, which certainly doesn't help the Giants' pass rush at all. So that means that there's a pretty good chance Zeke's going to see a lot of the ball. Dallas is going to try to take control of this game. But I do think that there's going to come a point in this season where Jason Garrett is going to want to pump the brakes on Zeke, especially if they can win this game, if they can get a lead. This is a team that's going to clinch that division. They're possibly going to clinch home field advantage real soon. Nobody's going to catch them in the NFC, it doesn't look like, especially if they can get a lead and win Sunday night. Alfred Morris is a more than capable backup behind that offensive line. So I just think that it's time to start slowing it down with Zeke. You're going to the playoffs. You've got a great opportunity to win everything. You want that kid fresh as hell coming off a bye week in the playoffs. Running backs aren't like baseball players. They're not like hitters or quarterbacks where where they need constant work. They can get it a little bit quicker. The fresher the leg, the better. I really believe that. I'm not trying to talk anybody out of starting Zeke this week, but I just think there's better choices. And I got LaShawn McCoy as my number one.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot better matchups when you look at the points being allowed to the running back position.
Let's slide down and get into some matchups. I'm going to be in complete agreement with McCoy. The chalk is the chalk, but who else do you have to line up in this running back position?
Oh, man, we were talking about picking on the Cleveland Browns. I'd like to do a little more with Jeremy Hill.
Okay.
So a few different factors. Number one, his cost at $6,900. I don't know how popular he'll be, but again, I'm not so worried about that with these larger matchup pools that we're digging from. If you look what he did earlier in the year at Cleveland, and I'm pretty sure they still had Gio there. He had 9 rushes for 168 yards and a touchdown.
He smoked them. Gio Bernard was dinged but playing.
Yeah, so I really think now I'm not going to be too hesitant about what he hasn't done in the last couple of weeks because he faced Baltimore, the number one rushing defense.
And nobody's running for 100 yards against Baltimore.
No, he still put up a touchdown against Philly, who really is pretty stingy with their run defense. So overall, I'm not concerned. And again, it's against Cleveland. They pretty much are the bottom of the barrel. I think only San Francisco, off the top of my head, it gives up more
worse. Yeah.
Back position. So I'm pretty confident.
I like Jeremy Hill
with it, and he's cheap. So I would be kind of hesitant, although given what we said, it might be a safe bet to do a Jeremy Hill, Andy Dalton, Tyler Eifert stack, and maybe even
think
Brandon
you should,
Fallon.
and I think as your fourth position there, you can either use that Bengals defense or you can use Brandon LaFell.
Well, remember, if you put all three of those guys, your other positions are all going to be studs.
Yeah, I think that's the real play is to find room to stuff in the real chalk and fill it in with guys who are going to get the ball against a shitty team. You're getting a ton of value with a Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, it's smart.
I think so. I'm going to give you I don't want to call him a sleeper because he's not a sleeper, and you're already starting him against me. But I can tell you what, I love Thomas Rawls against Green Bay this week. And let me take 30 seconds to tell you why. Seattle has all of a sudden found their groove. They couldn't find it against the Buccaneers down here in Tampa. I think that was a very fluky game. If we go playoff time and Tampa has to travel to Seattle, that's not happening. It's just not happening. But Thomas Rawls can benefit from the Seattle Seahawks offensively committing to the run. Tom Cable is their offensive line coach. He is, in my opinion, and many others' opinions, the best offensive line coach in the NFL. And they run block better than anybody you'll ever see when they do it right and when they're completely healthy. Thomas Rawls is benefiting from this team committing to the run, protecting Russell Wilson, and that's how they open up the passing game. I see this happening again. Rawls last week, 15 carries, 106 yards, and 2 scores early on in the Saturday Line Sports Talk podcast pick'em show. I picked Seattle to blow out Carolina on Sunday night, and then they did, and it was an ass kicking. I look for them to commit to the run again and try to keep the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. So I love Thomas Rawls this weekend. That was longer than 30 seconds. Sorry.
Well, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, it doesn't make me feel very good going against it.
My starting quarterback and one of my starting running backs, so keep on. I hope you like DeMarco Murray, too.
You are balling, son.
We'll see.
Yeah, but I like Rawls. Another running back. This is a bold prediction, and I wouldn't suggest anybody start him, but Todd Gurley is so due to score a touchdown.
He is, and he's got a pretty good matchup, too. I looked at that.
Atlanta stinks.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And their defense has been exposed, so there's going to be some points put up on the board.
Yeah, I think so. I think in the Rams, I've said it all year long, I'm not starting any Rams players because that team doesn't score, but this is just a bold prediction on running backs, and we've got to move on to wide receivers to keep this rolling. I watch Gurley's going to find himself with 90 yards and 2 scores this week. I don't know that I'm starting him and lining on that, but I do think this is time for that kid to turn it around. Did you have anybody else that you wanted to add in the running back category?
Maybe a Matt Forte. Excuse me.
Okay.
Maybe a Matt Forte. Given the matchup, I think he's going to have a bounce-back game. And if he's not healthy, then you might even be able to slick Bilal Powell in there and
and
have the same type of success with different, maybe
you know,
through the air.
in our pre-production discussion, I touched on this, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I thought about it, and I keep thinking about. I'm not starting a New York Jet. Not after that. I think that, like we had talked about, there's a pretty good chance that Todd Bowles will grab every man on that 53-man roster, drag him into the film room by their ears, and point at that screen and say, look at this miserable effort and performance you guys put on national television on Monday night. You embarrassed yourselves. Get out there and play. Now, they got to play for the number on the back of the jersey. Me and Joey Peeps always talk about NFL players being 1099s, man. They got to earn that job. They got to earn that spot, or they're gone. Put it on film. That was disgusting Monday night. Absolutely disgusting. Some Jet players may show up. I think that it's a different day. It's a different age, and these guys don't want to get hurt. I'm scared of any New York Jet player, with the exception of Matt Forte.
Yeah, okay.
He's a pro. Forte's a pro. He's going to show up and play hard. And that's just what that guy likes to do.
He's a pro with a great matchup. I guess the other guy I would kind of throw my hat in the ring with is Devonta Freeman. He seems to have getting some success coming back on again. So those are my a little lower 7,700 and 7,500 respectively. So,
okay.
I really like the McCoy and the Hill. If we really want to talk about who I'm really high on, Bell's the obvious
one. That's a nice combo.
I like Le'Veon Bell more than I like David Johnson this week, that's for sure. But, gosh, if I had David Johnson on my fantasy team, it would be awesome right now because then I'd know I'd be beating you.
But you don't. I do. I want to point out one more player, and I also want to let the listener know that after the season is ended, we are going to put together our list of strategic rules that we try to apply week in and week out. We don't always have time to talk about why we do everything. Sometimes we talk too much about it, but there is method to this madness. We do apply a lot of little rules, and just when I say rules, I mean, for example, that one thing that you'll always hear about fantasy football, the don't bench your studs. That's the one that comes to mind first and foremost, but there's a handful of other rules, if not 20 of them, that we do apply. So we're going to talk about that at the end of the season. We're going to do a little strategy show as well, but that'll be for a later date. Right now, we're just going to apply the strategies and talk to you about it. But along those lines, I wanted to bring up a guy like Christine Michael.
Okay.
And this is that vendetta game. For example, earlier in the season, when the Buffalo Bills went to San Francisco to play Chip Kelly, that was a situation where LaShawn McCoy probably walked into Rex Ryan's office and said, Coach, and Ryan just probably looked at him and nodded and said, Kid, what do you want to do? We're going to go run your other coach over. And he did. He shredded him. That's a revenge game. That's a stick-it-in-your-ghoulie kind of game, and I like it. Christine Michael has that opportunity this weekend. He's with Green Bay. He'll travel back to play the team that cut him this year after he played okay in the Seattle Seahawks, but he doesn't apply to that rule, so I wouldn't dare start him anywhere.
No. If you look at what Seattle's been doing to the running backs since Week 10, that Week 10 is when they gave their last chunk of yards and points, essentially, to that position. And from then on, they've really shut down the running back. And I think there's really I don't know how well Michael knows the playbook anyway. I mean, obviously he's a running back, and they know the holes, so they could just simplify the play call.
He's not their style of running back. They brought in that Niles Davis, who I think is a similar player to Christine Michael, and he just didn't work out. They cut him in a week, 2 weeks. Michaels is there. But don't be surprised if they're down around the goal line if they don't try to get that kid a score. NFL coaches like to do that to each other. They like to do it for their players, to show their other players they're on their side.
Which is fine, but
it's like psychological warfare.
He'll be lucky if he'll get you 12, 15 points. 15.
Who's that?
Excited. I said overall it would sound like if they use him the way that they really could, it's feasible for him to get like 12 points or something. If he gets you 15, you'd be like ecstatic. And I would be thrilled. I wouldn't even start him. I'll be surprised if he has 2.2 points in the whole game. But yeah.
It's just something I want to point out that is a situation in a flag that we look for, and I see the flag, but it doesn't apply here. You have to think through the rule, and as you think through the rule, this guy's just not good enough. LaShawn McCoy's great, so he definitely applies. But to keep this train rolling, let's move on to wide receivers. This is a tricky one this week.
Oh, it is. I went with just matchups and teams that have certain reasons why I like them versus the studs. The chalk that I went, Mike Evans just for the sake of the game and my Winston stacks. But I think you could have Evans in any lineup and be happy with what he's going to do this week.
Yeah, do you think Mike Evans is a must start? I do.